Happy New Year and welcome back to Call You in 5. My name is Cassie and I am excited to talk this morning about a different way to go about New Year's resolutions. I know that New Year's resolutions really aren't as much of the hype. You don't really hear people talking about them as much as you did, I don't know, when I was younger or growing up. I feel like they were a big thing that was associated with diet fads or quitting alcohol or giving up big things going into the new year, like strict new exercise regimens. There's always the jokes on TikTok about how many new people you see at the gym in the first few weeks of the year. It's like, wow, where did you all come from? And I think a lot of that is going away because of the legalism that can come with New Year's resolutions, which is a good thing to call out and think differently about. I was looking up some stats. I saw that 23% of New Year's resolutions are given up by the first week of January. And I think 43% are given up by January 31st. And I think often New Year's resolutions do come from a good place of identifying areas of your life that you want to see change or growth, or there's a pain point that you're experiencing that triggers you to want to go about doing something differently. But I think the problem that many people are noticing with New Year's resolutions is that they aren't very motivating when they're rooted in negativity. And I don't know if you've experienced that before when you've set out to do something. If it's lose a certain amount of weight or finally get through the threshold of a big project or I don't know, whatever that goal might have been for you. But when it's rooted in negativity, when it's rooted in frustration with yourself or even negative self-talk around, for that project example of, well, I just don't have a good enough work ethic to get it done. Or even if it's finishing your degree, right? I don't have the patience or determination necessary. Maybe, physically, things you want to change about yourself, maybe that's rooted in a disgust or frustration with yourself, who you are. Those things aren't very motivating in terms of being a catalyst for change or opportunity for us to make impactful growth within ourselves. And so I want to just suggest a couple ways that we can go about seeing growth in 2024 without experiencing shame or guilt for unmet goals or unmet expectations when those goals aren't accomplished that are rooted in frustration with ourselves. So one thing that I've adopted going into a new year is I spend the month of December really reflecting on what has happened or what I believe I've seen God do in my life the year prior. So as I look back over the past 11 months, I just try to pull from themes, things I was really proud of, things that were really hard that I had to be really resilient through. And trying to see even in the hard moments, how did I get through them to feel better about things? Or if by the end of the year, because sometimes that's the case, I'm not feeling really good about things, just trying to find the good or the things that matter most to me that I'm most proud of throughout the year. And as I do that, I try to think, okay, what are some of the common themes? Okay, relationships seem to be coming up a lot, or I have a lot of pride in projects and work that surround this topic area, or I lack or desire or I'm thankful for stability. I think many of you have heard me talk on the podcast that moving quite frequently has been a big part of my story over the last 4 years since I've known McKenna and been living in Colorado. And I think looking through and seeing the themes that are consistent through different seasons or different weeks of that year helps me see where I want to grow and how I can build upon the pre-existing momentum. I think sometimes the reason New Year's resolutions fail is that we're starting from 0 and trying to get to 100. If it's in a fitness goal or a work goal or a relationships goal, right? We're tackling something that we don't have any momentum in. And so instead of trying from 0, what would it look like to use momentum in your life to then start attacking some of those other goals that you have no momentum in with the momentum you have in other areas of your life? I think feeling proud of what we've accomplished sometimes is like the best reminder that we can accomplish other things, right? When we look back on the things that we've done, that's how we can see that we are capable of doing more, of accomplishing more, or like getting through hard things, is pulling from those past experiences that weren't always super ideal or fun or required a lot of the resilience and like discipline and patience that we need to attack similar projects moving forward. So with all of that reflection and looking at the momentum, I try to find a word that really sums up that like next year of growth that I want to accomplish. So I'll just give you my last year's example to go into this year's example. So at the end of 2022, I've also shared this story on the podcast before. At the end of 2022, I was ending a year of holding 3 jobs at any given time of the year. I'd been running my speaking business all year. I had been teaching fitness at Bar 3. I had also been working at my church there for a while as events and facilities director. When that job ended, I was doing social media for a gubernatorial campaign. So at any given point from January to November, I was working 3 jobs, and I was so tired at the end of the year. And so the word for 2022 was abide, and just like an intentionality about like being more present and even like more dependent on God that year. And so I looked at the ways that even though things were really hard and I was really tired, I was like still sustained in something bigger than myself, and specifically in community, and for me in my faith. And so I saw a pattern of my life, and I was like, man, I see the growth that I've accomplished in this like ability to like abide and be able to accomplish so much, but I see a need to pull back and be a little bit more present. So my word last year was simplicity. My word for 2023 was simplicity, and that tangibly looked like quitting a couple of my other jobs and going full time into my company. And then also just giving myself a lot more grace to say no a little bit more and take on a little bit less relationally. And it was really hard. I think sometimes the other thing is when we set New Year's resolutions or we like cast vision for the upcoming year, we have an idea of how we're going to feel right away. And when we don't feel that way right away, I think that's why the statistics speak for themselves and say things along the lines of, well, I should just give up. But instead of giving up, I think when we get to that point of frustration, like, oh, this is really hard, I think that's when we actually do need to push through and keep going and say, oh, if this is hard, that means I'm probably doing something right? Like I'm experiencing that tension point in my life that I was trying to like get to the core of. And so that's what happened for me in like March, April of last year. Is simplicity was really hard. I felt pretty aimless. The one job thing, it was taking a little bit longer than I expected to like generate revenue, like generate like a livable revenue. Because obviously the revenue Her Story Journey was creating was livable, supplementing my income with a million other jobs. But when I like believed I could go full time and I quit everything else, it just took a while to build up to that. But as the year continued, I realized how much I needed to do less in the front half of the year to be prepared for the like overwhelm in business and relationships in the latter half of the year. I mean, right when we started this podcast was like my peak season with work too. And so I was traveling multiple times a week to college campuses all over the country. And I needed that time of rest in the first half of the year, this like simplicity of life, to be able to tackle what was still a simple lifestyle, but had grown in demand in the latter half of the year. And so as I've been like thinking through what do I want my next year to look like, I just want to be more present with the people around me. And I want to be like firmly rooted where I'm at. This December, I think I shared this on the podcast last month, was the first December in like 4 years that I hadn't moved. And so as I was praying and just thinking through what I wanted 2024 to look like, a couple words came to mind, but the one I've landed on is dwell. And that's to be like fully present and rooted exactly where I am, both in like individual moments, like here, me in this hotel room in Virginia, recording a podcast for you, being like fully present in this moment, and then like being fully present with my Uber driver as I go to the airport later today, but also just being present in this season and like recognizing that each season of my life is going to hold things that are really fun and really exciting, and then also with like expectancy of what's to come. And it's okay to like live in that tension of like gratitude and like still desire to continue like growing and taking on things that come with future seasons, but still being content and present in that moment and holding and like living in the tension of the two. So that is my word for this year. And so that looks a lot like being a little bit more intentional about, specifically with social media, like how I manage my like social media intake while I'm traveling, so that I can take advantage of each and every potential like relationship that comes my way. I met this really sweet couple in the airport shuttle on the way to the Denver airport yesterday that are doing this like 4-month trek around the world. And I wouldn't have met them if my AirPods were in or if I was like mentally somewhere else, but because I chose to be like present in that moment, I got to like have this really sweet conversation with this couple as they like embark on this really exciting journey. I think that also looks like being content to sustain work that I have started and not always feel like I need to take on the next thing and grow in every season. There can be some seasons of sustaining and maintaining and other seasons of exponential growth. So for you, I don't know what that word might be. If the word really resonates with you, sometimes word of the year doesn't really resonate with everyone. It feels like too vague. So if you are a goal-oriented person and you want to set some like more intentional goals, maybe you don't even want to call them resolutions, but you want to set some more tangible goals for 2024, I'd encourage you going the SMART route. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable. Let's see what the R is. Relevant. All right. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's like going along with the acronym of SMART. And what I really like about SMART goals is that they keep you on track with like specific. It's not super vague if you're someone who needs to like have a really tangible thing you're going toward. Measurable means that you like have different checkpoints with yourself that you can go back to see how far you've come. Achievable means that we're like tossing unrealistic goals out the window. We are actually setting a goal that is like within the realm of what you can achieve this year. And then relevant is that it's actually really important to you this year, in the year 2024. And then time bound means that there is an end date in sight. And maybe that's the end of the year, or maybe that's within the quarter, or within that 6-month mark around July 1st. So giving yourself some really specific parameters to make sure that this goal or these couple goals make sense for this year. They have clear action items, and that they are coming from a place of like self-love and positivity, which isn't part of the SMART, but which is part of my hope for you, is that the goals that you make in 2024, the aspirations that you set, come from a place of pride in what you have accomplished and growth mindset of continuing to grow into the person that you aspire to be this year. So we will call you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Call You in 5.